My name is Gwen Hayes, and I am 63 years old. Until recently, I believed I had endured every kind of sorrow and disappointment life could offer. I had built a thriving real estate development firm from the ground up, navigated the cutthroat world of high-stakes investments, and survived the devastating loss of my beloved wife Eleanor 5 years ago. I thought I was resilient, a man who had seen it all and could handle anything. I was wrong. The ultimate test of my fortitude, it turned out, would come not from boardroom battles or market crashes, but from the insidious corrosion of my own family, culminating in a single withering sentence uttered at my own dining room table. Last Tuesday night, at that very table, the one where Eleanor and I had hosted countless joyful dinners, celebrated milestones, and watched our son, Alex, grow from a rambunctious boy into a man, my daughter-in-law, Veronica, uttered words that shattered what little dignity I had left. "Your voice is irritating, Gwen. Go eat in your room." I was sitting at the head of that table, the patriarch, albeit a quiet one in my grief. It was the same table Eleanor and I had bought 40 years ago when we first moved into this house in a quiet, tree-lined suburb of Dallas, Texas. The very table where I'd served thousands of meals, where I'd helped Alex with his homework, where I'd celebrated birthdays and holidays. But that night, in front of my 35-year-old son, Alex and his wife Veronica, I became nothing more than an unwanted guest, a nuisance to be silenced and dismissed. Alex didn't say a word. He just kept cutting his steak, his eyes glued to his plate, avoiding my gaze like he always did when Veronica decided to put me in my place. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, until I finally pushed back my chair, the scraping sound echoing in the sudden stillness. "Of course," I whispered, my voice hoarse, picking up my plate with hands that trembled more from hurt than from age. I'll finish eating upstairs." Veronica smiled, that cold, satisfied smile she wore whenever she won one of these unspoken battles, a chilling triumph that curdled my stomach. My story isn't just about a cruel remark. It's about a man who lost his voice, his home, and his son, to a manipulative force, only to rediscover his power when pushed to the absolute breaking point. This isn't about revenge, but about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, a legacy built on integrity and love, now tarnished by greed and disrespect. My early life was a stark contrast to the opulence and ease Veronica now demanded as her birthright. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Houston, Texas, the only son of a quiet, meticulous mechanic and a vibrant, resourceful seamstress. My father, Arthur, had hands stained perpetually with grease, but his heart was pure gold. He taught me the value of precision, of fixing things, of understanding how complex systems worked. My mother, Clara, taught me resilience, the art of making something beautiful from scraps, and the importance of holding on to your dreams, no matter how small your beginnings. Money was always tight, but our home was rich in love, laughter, and the scent of freshly baked bread. They instilled in me an unshakable work ethic and a deep respect for integrity. "Gwen," my father would often say, wiping his hands on a greasy rag, "a man's word is his bond. Your reputation is worth more than any dollar," my mother would add, "and don't ever let anyone make you feel small for daring to dream big." Driven by their lessons and a fierce desire to build something lasting, I worked my way through a state university, studying civil engineering. I took on odd jobs, waiting tables, tutoring, working construction labor, anything to pay for tuition and books. My days were long. My nights often spent poring over textbooks in dimly lit campus libraries. I was driven by a vision to construct not just buildings, but communities, to create structures that stood the test of time, both physically and ethically. It was during those grueling but formative college years that I met Eleanor. She was studying architecture, a whirlwind of creative energy and quiet grace, with eyes that saw beauty in every line and curve. She possessed a rare blend of artistic vision and practical intelligence. She was also fiercely independent, yet profoundly empathetic. Eleanor saw the raw ambition beneath my reserved exterior, the dreams I held in my heart, and she didn't just understand them, she amplified them. We fell in love amidst late-night study sessions and shared aspirations. Two practical dreamers who wanted to build a life together, literally and figuratively. She was the calm center to my sometimes frenzied focus, the artistic soul to my pragmatic mind. We were a perfect complementary force. After graduation, we moved to Dallas, a city brimming with opportunity and undergoing a period of rapid growth. I started as a junior engineer at a small construction firm, learning the ropes, absorbing every detail of the industry. Eleanor, with her burgeoning talent, found work at a prominent architectural studio, quickly rising through the ranks. We saved every penny, meticulously planning our future. Our evenings and weekends were spent poring over blueprints spread across our cramped apartment floor, scouting derelict lots with endless potential, and networking tirelessly with anyone who would listen to our ambitious plans. Our dream was to start our own real estate development company. In 1990, Hayes and Eleanor Developments began as a tiny two-person operation out of the garage of our first modest home. It was a brutal grind. There were years where we barely broke even, surviving on instant noodles and cheap coffee, working 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping on cots at job sites. Our first major project was renovating a dilapidated strip mall in a struggling neighborhood. We poured our hearts and souls into it, not just patching up cracks, but revitalizing the entire block, attracting local businesses, creating jobs. Eleanor's visionary designs transformed neglected spaces into vibrant community hubs, and my meticulous execution ensured every brick was laid with integrity, every beam sound. Our reputation grew, not just for quality construction, but for ethical practices and a genuine commitment to the communities we served. The company flourished, becoming one of the most respected mid-sized development firms in the state, known for our innovative designs, sustainable practices, and the integrity of our word. Alex, our only child, was born amidst this whirlwind of entrepreneurial growth and shared passion. He was a bright, curious boy, always asking, "How does that work?" and sketching his own fantastical buildings. We loved him fiercely, doting on him, wanting to give him every advantage we hadn't had: financial security, a strong moral compass, and the freedom to pursue his own passions. We brought him to construction sites from a young age, showed him blueprints, taught him about the integrity of a well-built structure, the importance of a strong foundation. He spent summers interning at the firm, starting in the mailroom, then moving through various departments, learning the business from the ground up, just as Eleanor and I had. We had always envisioned him taking over Hayes and Eleanor Developments one day, continuing our legacy, building on the foundation we had so painstakingly laid. Eleanor was the soul of our family and the firm. Her designs were not just functional, but beautiful, imbued with a sense of purpose and a profound understanding of how spaces affect people's lives. She had a rare ability to see the potential in derelict spaces, to envision thriving communities where others saw only decay. But beyond her professional brilliance, she was the emotional center of our home, the one who mediated disagreements with gentle wisdom, who brought warmth and laughter into every room. She held us all together, a gentle but firm anchor. It was Eleanor who, with her foresight and pragmatic wisdom, had insisted on setting up the Montgomery Trust, a substantial financial fund named after her mother's maiden name. "For unforeseen circumstances, Gwen," she'd said, her eyes wise and knowing. "For a rainy day, or for Alex's future should he choose a different path, or should he need a safety net. It's our way of ensuring true security, separate from the ebb and flow of the business. Something untouchable for true peace of mind. After her passing, it became my primary source of personal liquidity, a sacred fund, a tangible piece of Eleanor's enduring care. Her death, 5 years ago, was like a seismic shift that cracked the very foundations of my life. A sudden, aggressive pancreatic cancer stole her from me in a matter of excruciating months. The world went silent. The vibrant colors of my life faded to muted grays. The house felt hollow, echoing with her absence. The company, once a shared dream, became a solitary, heavy burden. And Alex, adrift in his own profound grief, became vulnerable, a ship without a rudder, susceptible to the first strong current that came his way. That's when Veronica entered the picture. She was one of Alex's colleagues at the prestigious investment bank where he worked. A sharp, undeniably beautiful woman with striking looks, impeccable designer clothes, and an even sharper tongue, cloaked in an initial veneer of sophisticated charm. At first, I was cautiously optimistic. She seemed intelligent, driven, a good match for Alex's quiet ambition, a woman who could help him navigate the high-flying world of finance. She was charming at family dinners, always complimenting my cooking, asking about the quaint local bakery where Eleanor and I used to get our morning pastries, expressing an almost too eager interest in the history of Hayes and Eleanor developments. But gradually, subtly at first, then with increasing brazenness, a darker, more domineering side emerged. Veronica had grand ambitions for Alex, far grander and more ruthless than his own. She saw my son's steady, comfortable career at the investment bank as merely a stepping stone to something far more lucrative, something that could propel them into the uppermost echelons of Dallas society. She openly despised anything that smacked of middle-class comfort or old-fashioned values, a clear jab at my practical, hard-working upbringing and Eleanor's grounded ethos. She constantly pushed Alex to climb higher, to pursue more lucrative, albeit ethically ambiguous, deals, to cultivate relationships based purely on financial gain rather than genuine connection. She subtly, then overtly, began to undermine my influence in Alex's life, portraying me as outdated, my values as old-fashioned and irrelevant in their modern, fast-paced world. "Alex needs to make his own mark, Gwen," she'd say, her smile tight, barely reaching her eyes. "He can't just be Eleanor's son forever, stuck in a dusty old development firm. He's destined for bigger things, truly." Their wedding was a lavish affair, an ostentatious display of wealth and ambition, financed mostly by a substantial gift from me, a loan, she called it, to help Alex transition into his own independent financial consultancy. In reality, it was seed money for her own high-end interior design firm, a venture, I quickly learned, that existed mostly on paper, sustained by lavish spending on client entertaining and networking events at exclusive clubs rather than actual billable design projects. The loan, a significant sum drawn from the Montgomery Trust, was meant to be repaid within 2 years. But every time I gently inquired about its progress, or, more pointedly, its repayment, Veronica would roll her eyes with thinly veiled contempt, or Alex would mumble vague excuses about market conditions or startup struggles. "Gwen, Veronica's putting in so many hours," he'd insist. Avoiding my gaze, "She'll get there. It just takes time for a luxury brand to establish itself." The money, a substantial portion of Eleanor's carefully built legacy, was simply swallowed by Veronica's insatiable appetite for luxury, social climbing, and the endless maintenance of her false image. Life in my own home, after Alex and Veronica moved in temporarily during a renovation of their own condo that stretched indefinitely, became a slow, agonizing erosion of my dignity, a systematic takeover. My comfortable routines, honed over decades with Eleanor, were brutally disrupted. My quiet spaces, once sanctuaries of peace, were invaded by loud music, late-night phone calls, and the constant hum of a chaotic, self-absorbed life. Veronica, without a single word of consultation, began to redecorate my living room. My cherished antique furniture, pieces Eleanor and I had painstakingly collected and restored, were deemed clutter or too traditional. She replaced them with cold, minimalist pieces, all chrome and glass, stripping the room of its warmth and history, replacing it with a sterile, impersonal display of modern luxury. My complaints were met with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, Gwen, darling, you really have no eye for contemporary design. This is so much more chic." She began dictating meal times, criticizing my cooking, recipes passed down from my mother, refined over years with Eleanor, calling my beloved beef stew too heavy or my apple pie too rustic. She even replaced my fine china, a wedding gift from Eleanor's grandmother, with sleek, modern stoneware, declaring the old set outdated. She hosted loud, late-night parties for her clients and social acquaintances, filling my house with strangers, their raucous laughter and blaring music echoing until the early hours. I lay awake in my room, trying to sleep through the din, feeling utterly alien in the home I had built. Each morning, I would find the house in disarray, empty champagne bottles scattered, cigarette butts in my prized rose garden, a silent testament to her disregard. Alex, my son, my only flesh and blood, became a shadow of his former self, constantly placating Veronica, averting my eyes, silently enabling her relentless control. He was a prisoner in his own home, or perhaps a willing accomplice, benefiting from Veronica's relentless ambition and his own fear of her wrath. I became the old man in the house, tolerated because I was useful, because I possessed the Montgomery Trust, which Veronica clearly saw as her personal ATM, a limitless source of funds for her failed ventures and lavish lifestyle. My opinions were dismissed with a condescending smile. My presence was an inconvenience, something to be endured. My voice, apparently, was irritating. I cooked, I cleaned, I maintained the sprawling house I had built with Eleanor, keeping it immaculate, a silent testament to my continued presence, while they lived like kings, depleting my resources, chipping away at my spirit, eroding my very sense of self. I felt invisible, a ghost in my own home, haunted by the vibrant memory of the life Eleanor and I had built together. I clung to the desperate hope that Alex would one day wake up, would see Veronica for who she truly was, would choose his father over this toxic charade. But each passing day, each casual slight, each silent, strained meal, eroded that hope, leaving only a bitter residue of disappointment. The Tuesday dinner, that infamous evening, was the culmination of months, years, of slow, insidious abuse. Veronica was particularly agitated that night. Her design firm was not just struggling, it was openly collapsing. Client payments were long overdue, her lavish expenses had dried up her meager operating capital, and the last substantial withdrawal from the Montgomery Trust, now significantly overdue, had almost been fully depleted. She had been pushing Alex relentlessly to ask me for yet another, even larger, infusion of funds. But I had firmly, though gently, refused, citing the lack of progress and the mounting debt. The tension in the dining room was palpable, thick with unspoken resentment and thinly veiled desperation. I had attempted, foolishly perhaps, to lighten the mood. I began recounting a humorous anecdote about a former colleague from my early days at Hayes and Eleanor Developments, a story about a comical mishap on a construction site, a memory that still brought a faint smile to my face. My voice, typically soft-spoken, might have been a touch louder than usual as I chuckled, relishing the memory of a simpler, more authentic time. That's when she launched her verbal assault. "Your voice is irritating, Gwen. Go eat in your room." Her words cut through the air like a poisoned dart, dripping with pure contempt, laced with a venomous satisfaction, a clear intention to humiliate me publicly, to assert her dominance. Alex flinched, a subtle tremor running through his shoulders, but he said nothing, his eyes glued to his plate, pretending not to hear, not to see. His silence was a betrayal far deeper than Veronica's cruel words. It was the silence of a son choosing his comfort over his father's dignity. It was the silence of a man who had lost his moral compass, utterly. I pushed back my chair, the scraping sound echoing with a chilling finality in the sudden stillness of the room. My hand trembled as I picked up my plate, the perfectly cooked steak, the roasted vegetables, Eleanor's favorite, prepared just as she used to make them, now cold, tasteless, repulsive. "Of course," I whispered, my voice hoarse, barely audible, a fragile whisper. I'll finish eating upstairs." I walked slowly from the dining room, each step heavy with the weight of my humiliation, the plastic smile on Veronica's face burning into my memory like a brand. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow, as if an invisible hand was squeezing the air from my lungs. The shame was a hot flush that spread from my neck to my face, then receded, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache. I climbed the grand staircase, the same staircase Eleanor had once decorated with garlands at Christmas. The same staircase Alex had slid down on a laundry basket when he was a boy, his joyful shrieks echoing through the house. Now it felt like a climb to my prison cell, each step a further descent into despair. I sat on the edge of my king-sized bed, the untouched plate growing cold beside me. Tears, hot and bitter, finally welled in my eyes, tracing paths down my wrinkled cheeks, tasting like salt and regret. I was 63 years old, a successful businessman, a grieving widower, and I was being treated like a disobedient child in my own home. This was not living. This was existing, a mere shadow of the vibrant, purposeful man Eleanor had loved, a shadow of the respected father Alex once looked up to. That night, lying awake in the suffocating silence of my bedroom, a profound clarity settled over me. The tears eventually dried, replaced by a cold, hard resolve, unyielding as granite. I had spent years, decades, building an empire, ensuring a comfortable, secure life for my family. Now, that empire, that comfort, was being used as a weapon against me. Eleanor had created the Montgomery Trust for our security, for our future, for a legacy of responsibility and care. Veronica saw it as her personal piggy bank, a limitless source of funds for her failed ventures and lavish lifestyle. Alex, my son, whom I loved more than life itself, was a bystander, a complicit enabler, too weak or too afraid to stand up to his wife, too lost in his own ambition and fear to see the damage being done. No more. The Montgomery Trust was not just a name, it was a testament to Eleanor's foresight, her wisdom, her enduring love. It represented our shared legacy, our hard-earned security. It was not meant to fund a manipulative daughter-in-law's frivolous ambitions. This was not about revenge, not truly. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my home, and perhaps my son. It was about honoring Eleanor's memory and ensuring her legacy was protected from exploitation. The next morning, I didn't push the incident from my mind. I didn't try to rationalize or forgive. I acted. At precisely 8 a.m., before Alex and Veronica were even out of bed, I called Sarah Jenkins, my estate lawyer. Sarah had been Eleanor's trusted friend since college, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who had meticulously set up the Montgomery Trust according to Eleanor's precise specifications, and she knew its purpose better than anyone. "Sarah," I began, my voice clear, unwavering, a stark contrast to my defeated demeanor the previous night. "I need you to do something for me. Effective immediately, I want to formally cancel the outstanding loan to Veronica's interior design firm. I also want to initiate a full, comprehensive audit of all funds dispersed from the Montgomery Trust over the past 5 years, specifically anything related to Veronica or Alex's personal expenses or business ventures. I need every single penny accounted for." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Then Sarah's calm, professional voice. "Gwen, are you certain? This will undoubtedly have significant, perhaps even irreparable repercussions for Alex and Veronica. That loan in particular is quite substantial, and the audit could uncover a lot." "I am absolutely certain, Sarah. The terms of the loan have been repeatedly violated. The funds are clearly not being used as agreed, and I have evidence of gross misuse. Furthermore, I want to review the exact terms of the Montgomery Trust with you today. I need to understand, unequivocally, what control I have over it, and how I can protect its principal from further depletion, ensuring Eleanor's true intentions are honored." I then briefly, dispassionately, recounted the dinner incident, the years of subtle abuse, Alex's enabling silence, and the systematic erosion of my comfort in my own home. Sarah listened patiently, her silence a profound acknowledgement of my pain, a silent fury simmering beneath her professional demeanor. "Gwen," she said, her voice softer now, tinged with genuine concern and a touch of professional steel. "This is long overdue. You know, Eleanor intended that trust for your security, for your peace of mind, and for true, legitimate family support, not to fund someone else's frivolous endeavors or lavish lifestyles. I'll get started immediately. Consider it done. I'll have the cancellation notice drawn up by noon, and the auditors will begin their work this afternoon. I'll also send over the trust documents for your review. We will protect Eleanor's legacy, Gwen, and your peace. That afternoon, I faced Veronica. I called her and Alex into the formal living room, the one she had so carelessly, so coldly redecorated, stripping it of all warmth and history. I stood by the fireplace, Eleanor's favorite spot, and met their gazes. "I've just spoken with Sarah Jenkins," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, a deliberate mask to hide the turmoil beneath, to project an unshakable resolve. "I've formally canceled the loan to your firm, Veronica, effective immediately. The funds will no longer be dispersed, and all future disbursements from the Montgomery Trust will be subject to my direct, explicit approval, with a full, detailed accounting of how the funds are to be used, and only for legitimate purposes that align with the Trust's original intent." Veronica's face, usually so composed, so carefully manicured, contorted with disbelief, then with incandescent, barely controlled fury. "What? You can't do that! That's my business. My livelihood. That money was promised to us. It's practically Alex's inheritance. You old fool. You're ruining everything." She turned to Alex, her eyes blazing, her voice sharp with accusation. "Alex, say something. Tell your father he can't do this. You promised me." Alex, caught in the terrifying crossfire between his enraged wife and his suddenly resolute father, stammered, his face pale and sweating. "Dad, what are you doing? This is crazy. Veronica needs that money. Our future depends on it." "No, Alex," I said, meeting his eyes, my gaze unwavering, holding his gaze until he flinched. "Veronica wants that money. And she wants it for a business that, according to my preliminary audit, is hemorrhaging funds and has produced virtually no legitimate income. It's a facade, Alex, a monument to greed and irresponsibility. And as for inheritance, this money was Eleanor's legacy. It was intended to protect this family, to provide a solid foundation, not to subsidize a reckless lifestyle or prop up a fraudulent enterprise." I paused, my voice rising slightly, imbued with the authority I hadn't dared to use in years, decades. "This is my home. The Montgomery Trust is my wife's sacred legacy, and I will not stand by and watch it, or my dignity, be squandered any longer. You are both living here at my discretion, and that discretion is wearing dangerously thin. This is not a discussion. This is my decision, final and absolute." Veronica shrieked, a high-pitched, almost animalistic sound of pure, unadulterated rage and disbelief. "You old fool! You'll regret this. You'll be alone. Alex, you can't let him do this. You're a weakling, a coward." She stormed out of the room, her designer handbag swinging wildly, slamming the heavy oak door behind her, the sound reverberating through the silent house like a gunshot. Alex stood there, pale and trembling, caught between his wife's fury and my unexpected, unyielding defiance. He looked at me with a complex mixture of anger, confusion, and perhaps a flicker of genuine fear for his crumbling future. He said nothing, simply turned and followed Veronica, leaving me alone in the meticulously redecorated living room, feeling a profound sense of exhaustion, but also a nascent spark of liberation, a powerful sense of reclaiming my rightful place. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Veronica, and by extension, for Alex. Without the regular illicit infusions from the Montgomery Trust, Veronica's interior design firm, which was more of a shell corporation for her extravagant personal spending and the cultivation of a false image, crumbled with astonishing speed. Her lavish office suite, rented entirely with my money, was soon vacated due to non-payment. Her clients, mostly superficial social acquaintances attracted by her supposed wealth and Alex's connections, quickly dried up as her financial troubles became apparent. Her numerous credit cards, maxed out to their limits, were frozen. Her carefully constructed facade of success and sophistication shattered, revealing the hollow core beneath. The whispers about Veronica, once confined to polite society, became open, derisive gossip. Her high society friends, quick to flock to perceived wealth and status, were even quicker to abandon those who fell from grace. Even Eleanor Sterling, if she were still alive, would have despised such a public display of financial incompetence and social ruin. Veronica was swiftly, brutally, shunned from the very circles she had so desperately sought to conquer. Her name now whispered with disdain at charity galas and country club luncheons. Alex, caught in the brutal wake of her spectacular downfall, suffered too. His own career at the investment bank, though stable, didn't provide the kind of astronomical income needed to sustain Veronica's lavish lifestyle, nor did it earn him enough to rescue her spectacularly failed venture. Their arguments became louder, more frequent, and brutally vitriolic, echoing through the house, shattering the illusion of their perfect marriage. I heard them, night after night, the bitter recriminations, the furious accusations. Veronica, in her blind rage, blamed Alex for everything. For not handling me, for not securing more money, for her ruined reputation, for her lost future. Alex, for his part, slowly, painfully, began to realize the true depth of Veronica's self-serving, manipulative nature, her complete lack of empathy, and her unwavering focus on herself. The veneer of their perfect, ambitious partnership cracked, then shattered completely, revealing the toxic codependency and mutual exploitation that lay beneath. It was a brutal awakening for him. Seeing the woman he had sacrificed his family for revealed as a ruthless opportunist. One cold, clear morning, 2 months to the day after I had cancelled the loan, I awoke to an unfamiliar, profound silence. No slamming doors, no angry shouts, no furious phone calls from Veronica echoing from her bedroom. She was gone. She had packed her bags in the middle of the night, leaving Alex a curt, venomous note, blaming him for all her misfortunes, and accusing me of being a tyrannical old man who had ruined her life out of spite. Alex, bewildered and heartbroken, came to my study an hour later, his face drawn and pale, his eyes red-rimmed from tears. He didn't ask where she went. He just sat there, slumped in the armchair, silent tears streaming down his face, a raw vulnerability I hadn't seen since he was a small boy. For the first time in years, he looked like the lost, confused son he once was, stripped bare of all pretense and false bravado. "Dad," he whispered, his voice broken, barely audible. I don't know what to do. She took everything. My savings, my dignity, my future. She told me she loved me, but she just wanted the money, and I let her. I let her do this to us. To you. She didn't take your dignity, son, I replied, my voice gentle but firm, unwavering. She stripped it away piece by piece, and you let her. You allowed it to happen. But it's not gone. It's just buried under layers of self-deception and fear. And you can get it back. I looked at him, truly looked at him, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, seeing the lost boy beneath the hardened shell of the man. This is your home, Alex. It's always been your home. But you need to decide whose terms you're going to live on. Hers or yours. You need to decide who you are and who you want to be. Alex moved out of their shared bedroom and into a guest room, while he sorted out the agonizing divorce proceedings and figured out his next steps, both personally and professionally. It wasn't the life either of us had planned, but it was honest, in a way our lives hadn't been for years. The legal proceedings with Veronica were messy and protracted, as expected. She tried every tactic, every manipulation, to claim a substantial portion of the Montgomery Trust, but Sarah Jenkins, Eleanor's steadfast friend and brilliant attorney, fiercely protected it. Sarah had meticulously structured the trust to ensure its principal could not be easily accessed or divided in a divorce, precisely to prevent such predatory claims. Veronica left with little more than her designer clothes, a handful of worthless debts, and a tarnished reputation. I heard through various channels that she had indeed moved to Florida, already targeting a new set of unsuspecting victims, always looking for the next person to exploit, perpetually chasing a phantom of wealth and status. I considered warning her potential targets, but I'd learned that some people only believe the truth when they discover it themselves, painfully. Slowly, painstakingly, Alex and I began to rebuild our relationship, brick by painful brick. The early days were awkward, filled with unspoken regrets, lingering tension, and the heavy burden of remorse. But we kept at it, driven by a mutual, unspoken desire to heal. We started with simple things, cooking dinner together in my large, now quieter kitchen, sharing the comfortable silence. We watched old movies, classics Eleanor loved, finding comfort in their familiarity. We took long walks in the evenings around the neighborhood, the crisp Texas air invigorating our lungs, gradually talking more and more. He began to talk, hesitantly at first, then with increasing openness, about his struggles, his shame, his profound realization of Veronica's manipulative nature, and his own devastating complicity. He acknowledged his enabling behavior, his fear of confronting Veronica, his desperate need for her validation that had blinded him to her true character. He admitted that he had felt trapped, suffocated by her relentless demands, but hadn't known how to escape, how to break free. "Dad," he confessed one night, sitting across from me at the very dining room table where my humiliation had occurred, tears in his eyes, his voice choked with emotion. "I let her treat you terribly. I let her make you feel invisible in your own home. I'm so sorry. I hated myself for it, every single day, but I didn't know how to stop it. I was so lost." "It takes immense courage, son, to admit that," I told him, reaching across the table to place a hand on his arm, a gesture of comfort and connection I hadn't made in years. "And it takes even more courage to change. You're here now. You're facing it. That's what matters. That's where healing begins." Our conversations were no longer superficial pleasantries or arguments, but genuine, heart-to-heart exchanges of thoughts and feelings, stripped bare of pretense. My voice was no longer irritating. My presence was no longer unwelcome. Alex listened when I spoke, truly listened, with an earnestness I hadn't seen in him since before Veronica. And I, in turn, listened to him, offering guidance without judgment, simply being present, being his father again. We even began to talk about Hayes and Eleanor developments again, not as a source of his inheritance, but as a potential career path, something he might genuinely want to contribute to learn from, to build upon. He expressed a newfound interest in ethical development, in building sustainable communities, in honoring the legacy of integrity Eleanor and I had always championed. It was a tentative beginning, but it was a beginning nonetheless. I kept the Montgomery Trust, but I used it differently now, smarter, guided by Eleanor's true intentions and the painful lessons I had learned. Its funds went toward causes that truly honored her memory, establishing the Eleanor Hayes Foundation for Ethical Development, providing scholarships for young engineers and architects who shared our values of integrity and community focus, supporting nonprofits that aided elderly people dealing with financial abuse, and, of course, ensuring a comfortable, secure future for myself and for my son, who had, finally, found his way back to me, not as a recipient of an inheritance, but as a partner in rebuilding. On quiet evenings, Alex and I would cook dinner together, the familiar rhythm of chopping and stirring a comforting balm. We'd eat at the dining room table, now cleansed of its bitter memories, transformed into a space of genuine connection, talking about our days, our hopes, our fears, just like we used to when he was young. The silence that now filled the house no longer felt lonely. It felt like peace, like possibility, a comforting, familiar presence. I'd found my power, and more importantly, I'd found my voice again, clear and strong, in my own home, at my own table, with my son who'd remembered how to see me as more than just an obstacle to navigate around, but as his father, his friend, his mentor. The empire Eleanor and I built was still mine, but now I ruled it wisely, with compassion and clear boundaries, for the greater good, not for personal gain. This journey, from being banished to my room to reclaiming my life and my legacy, taught me profound lessons. It taught me that sometimes the ones closest to you can inflict the deepest wounds, not always with malice, but with a casual disregard born of unchecked entitlement and misplaced ambition. It taught me that love, even parental love, cannot thrive in an environment of constant disrespect and exploitation. It taught me that true strength isn't about shouting louder or fighting harder, but about knowing when to draw a firm line, to say no more, and to reclaim your own worth, your own dignity. Eleanor's wisdom, embodied in the careful structure of the Montgomery Trust, ultimately saved me. She had, in her quiet, prescient way, foreseen the potential for her family to be tested, for her values to be challenged, and she had built safeguards into our legacy. Her spirit lives on, not just in the beautiful, ethical buildings we designed, but in the renewed strength of my voice, in the healing of my family, and in the renewed purpose of my life. The peace I feel now is not the absence of conflict, but the profound presence of integrity, of love given and received freely, without transaction or expectation. My home is now truly my sanctuary again, filled with genuine warmth and honest conversation. Alex is slowly, steadily rebuilding his life, learning the true meaning of responsibility and contribution. He's taking evening courses in ethical business practices, showing a genuine interest in the principles that built Hayes and Eleanor developments, and even bringing new, sustainable project ideas to the table. We still have a long way to go, but the path is now clear, built on honesty and mutual respect. I know Eleanor would be profoundly proud. Have you ever had to draw a difficult line with family members who were taking advantage of you? How did you find your voice and reclaim your life? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you recognize your own worth, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your dignity is never for sale. True family supports your growth rather than exploits your goodness.